2007 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. Going to do the front universal joint for the axle. So we'll show you the steps in order. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is remove all the lug nuts and get this rim off. It has a special socket to remove the lock nuts. So we'll go ahead and get that wheel off. Okay, we got the wheel off. So next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to take off these two caliper bracket bolts. There's one here and there's one here. That's a 21 mil. So remove those and we'll go on to the next step. So once you get the two 21 millimeter brake caliper bracket bolts, the caliper should, with some persuasion, should come right off. A little bit difficult with one hand, but okay. Now you're going to want to support the caliper from a bungee cord so it's not putting pressure on the brake line. Okay, after you got your caliper hanging from right there, you should be able just to take the rotor right off. Like so. And the next thing you're going to want to do is loosen this axle nut, which is, I believe, a 36 millimeter axle nut. So you're going to take that off. Okay. Okay. So now we remove the 36 mil axle nut. So there's a few more bolts that hold in the wheel bearing. It's this one here, and then you have one here. There's also one right there on the other side. Now these are 12-point 13mm sockets. Do not use a 6-point on these bolts. And what we're going to do, since we had trouble with the last ones, is we're going to heat up the outer part of this hub assembly with the torch so we can get those out of there without breaking them. Okay, like I said, for these wheel bearing bolts, you're going to want a 12-point socket. So there's your 12-point 13 mil. Okay, so grab yourself a small propane torch, and you're going to heat just around the nuts. Make sure you don't melt the brake line. So you're going to heat all this up. And you're going to do it to all three of those bolts. Okay? And then we'll come back. Okay. Once you've heated up around this bolt here and this one here, they actually come out really easy now. Didn't have to hardly put any pressure on that. And they're ready to come out. So you're going to take out that one there, and then the other one that we can't see until we turn the wheel. Okay, so like I said, there's a third bolt that needs to be tackled, and it's right here. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to heat this up, and that should come out like butter. After you get your three bearing bolts out, there they are there. This whole bearing should pop right off, but it has a sensor right here and a line. You don't want to break that. So you're going to wiggle this out, and then you're going to hang this thing from a bungee cord so you're not putting stress on this line either. So we'll do that. Now sometimes these bearings are kind of corroded and stuck on there. So what you're going to want to do is get a piece of wood, and you're going to want to come behind it and hit it with a hammer this way, and it should pop off. Okay, so now the bearing's off. Like I said, make sure you attach it to something so that it's not putting stress on that line. So the bearing's right out of the way now. So now we're looking at the end of the axle shaft. Now the universal joint right here for the axle, this is what needs to be changed. So the easiest way to do that is to slide the entire axle right out, and then we'll get it in the vise and we'll show you how to change the actual universal joint. So you're going to pull this axle straight out. So here's the end we were looking at a minute ago. You see we pulled the whole axle right out. Okay. And this is the universal joint here, and this goes bad on these things quite often. Okay, so first thing you're going to need to do is clean up all this area here to find out where the retainer clips are. There's going to be one here on this part, there's going to be one here, there's going to be one here, and one on the opposite side. So there's 4 in total, and these are what the other old ones look like. So they're going to look like that. So we're going to get those out before we can start pressing it. Okay, now that we've cleaned it up a little bit, you can see that that's where the opening of the clip is. That's where it separates, and the other side's down there. So you're going to want to get your screwdriver on that, tap it until it comes out enough that you can remove it. And you want to do that for all 4. Alright, once you tap it enough times, you can see that the spring, the retainer clip actually pops out a bit. So you can just grab it, remove it, throw it to the side, and do it for the rest of these. Okay, now we got the 4 retainer clips, 1 from each part of this universal joint. So now it's safe for us to press this out. We're going to be doing that with a ball joint press. You can use a hammer. I wouldn't recommend it. You can either go to Princess Auto if you're in Canada, or probably Harbor Freight in the States, and get a ball joint press set for a decent price. So we'll show you what that looks like. Okay, here's the ball joint press. Set my glove down. So basically it's a big heavy duty C-clamp and basically a lead screw that has really thick aggressive teeth on it. So basically this part is going to be pushed up against one of the sides of the U-joint housing, and this will go on the other side. So it will push the U-joint all the way one way, so you can remove a cap. There's 4 caps. So this will push it all the way out to expose the cap. You remove the cap, and then you push the joint back the other way. Do the same thing on all 4 sides. So we'll show you how that works. Okay, like I said, so this is what we're going to be using. So basically, when you start turning this screw, it's going to keep pushing farther and farther, and it's going to push on this side here, and this hole is going to allow this side to not be inhibited by it. So it'll basically take the whole U-joint is going to go that way. Then you're going to remove a cap. Here's one of the old ones from the other side, and all those little needle bearings that fell out of it because they're junk. And then you're going to push it back the other way and remove this cap. Then you're going to flip it around. You're going to push this cap that way to remove the opposite cap, and you're going to go back and forth until you can get that old U-joint out of there. Okay. Now before anything, since these things are usually seized up pretty good, is you're going to take that same torch and we're going to heat all the way around here and all the way around this one as well. That way it should expand enough where we can actually push it out, and that should hopefully not be too much trouble. You're going to get your ball joint press. You're going to line it up the way you want it. And then you're going to put an impact gun on this side here and hopefully push the whole U-joint in that direction. Okay, so that's all the way over. It's fine. And I need a screwdriver. Now you're going to want to do the same thing and press it back the other way. Yeah. Okay, so here's the new universal joint and the new bearing caps right there. All those needle bearings, all they're held in by is grease. So be careful not to drop those or get them out of arrangement. So we're gonna go ahead and put this in, the U-joint in, and then carefully try to get those caps on there. Okay. Like so. Okay, so the goal is just to get them in far enough that you can get the retainer rings on them. So this one on the left here looks good. The one on the right maybe needs to go in a bit. There's the new clips. Okay. Yep, and then just take your screwdriver just to make sure they're fully seated. see that that clip dropped down into place, so.
We're in.
So I think we're in.
It's just off a little bit there.
So we're just going to repeat the process for the remaining half.
Oh, it slid right in.
Nice. Okay. Now we're just going to rotate this whole shaft in the vise so we can see the other end.
Oh,
It'll squeeze. Okay. Before you tap that in, so you can see on this cap right here, this groove, turn it a little bit. This groove right here is where you want your retainer clip to go in. So it has to go in far enough that you can access it with the clip.
clip on this side.
Okay. Go a little off course.
There we go.
Okay.
That. Side just
Keeps wanting to pop out.
Where's it in? Nope. Okay, we're gonna turn it.
Okay, so then that one's in. Just needs to be fully seated. Okay, and that should be good. Now you can start reassembly. So now you're just going to carefully slide the axle all the way back in. And there is plastic spacer washers in there. So you want to be careful not to knock them over. Otherwise you'll have to pull them all the way out, put them on the shaft and reinsert it. Just carefully slide it in there. Feel all the splines line up. And that little boot right there needs to be replaced, but that'll be for another day. Okay, axle's all the way back in. Okay, so now we have the rotor guard and the bearing, which needs to be pushed back in there. Okay. And then those 12-point bolts we were talking about before, there's 3 of those that need to be reinstalled. Yeah, there you are. So you can see Matt's wiggling it around to make sure that those threads line up. Can be a little bit tricky, but okay, and there's the other one there. And just gently wiggle the bearing back and forth until you feel the teeth engage. Okay. And it's too hard to film the third one, but I showed you earlier in the video which 3 bolts and where they're located. So go ahead, put those all the way in, torque them down, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so like we were saying, there's 1 bolt there, 1 here, and then 1 on the other side. So those are the brake or the bearing bolts. Those are reassembled. So basically you just go ahead and put your axle nut back on, and then your rotor. But we got some new rotors here that are going to be going on it, so we're going to be installing those and new pads before continuing. 36mm axle nut. You're going to want to crank this and then go ahead and get your impact gun on it. Oh, so now we're spinning. Watch your face. Okay, once you got that snugged up, you should be ready to move on. Okay, so Matt's going ahead and popping out the old brake pads. You're going to want to use the old brake pads to compress the caliper. These ones shouldn't need to go too far because the pads actually were up pretty good. So you're just going to want to retract that piston. That way you can make room for the beefier rotors and the new pads.
I'm not sure this one's gonna fit.
So we'll try to find the right C-clamp. Okay, so when taking out your old pads, right there in those little grooves, always go ahead and clean those up with a wire brush and make sure you lubricate them. No, the clips are going to be replaced, but the part here on the caliper, this needs to be cleaned out. Or not the caliper, but the caliper bracket. Okay, so like I was saying, right in here, you're going to pull out these old clips. Can't really do this with one hand. And you're going to clean all that up with your little wire brush.
Just like brushing your teeth.
Yep. So let's make sure that's all nice and cleaned out. Otherwise you might have trouble getting your new clips in, especially. So clean it up nice and neat, and then grease it up, slide them in. Here's the other side. Brand new rotors and pads. Looking good. Put your wheels back on, and that's the end of it. We're done.